Phantoms of the Black Forest. Deep within Germany's Black Forest, legends speak of restless spirits that guard the ancient woods. When a group of travelers ventures off the marked trail, they discover the forest is alive with whispers, shadows, and unseen eyes. As night falls, the boundary between myth and reality shatters, and the phantoms begin their hunt. The forbidden trail. The Black Forest stretched endlessly, its towering pines knitting together like a dark ceiling above. To most locals, it was a place of beauty but also of warning. Ancient tales whispered of strange lights that danced at night, of figures gliding silently between the trees, and of travelers who had entered but never returned. Despite the warnings, curiosity had its grip on a small group of friends visiting Germany. To them, legends were nothing more than tourist tales meant to thrill. They stood at the entrance of a narrow trail, barely visible beneath tangled roots and thick moss. A wooden sign leaned crookedly against a stone, its lettering faded by years of rain and mist. It bore a simple word: verboten. Forbidden. One of them, Eric, laughed as he brushed dust off the sign. It's just to keep people out of the old paths, probably dangerous terrain, that's all. His voice carried the kind of false confidence meant to mask unease. Lena, the most cautious of the group, hesitated. Locals warned us about this place. They said people disappear here. Maybe we should stick to the tourist trails. But her concerns were drowned out by the others' excitement. The thrill of exploring something hidden, something off-limits, was far more tempting than staying safe. The idea of finding an untouched part of the forest, something no guidebook mentioned, was irresistible. With nervous laughter and teasing remarks, the group pressed forward, brushing aside branches and stepping onto the forgotten trail. As they moved deeper, the forest seemed to shift. The air grew colder, carrying a dampness that clung to their skin. Birds that had been chirping moments before fell silent, as if the trees themselves had swallowed their songs. Every footstep crunched unnaturally loud on the forest floor, the sound echoing in a way that made them glance over their shoulders. The trail wound deeper, narrower, the towering pines closing in around them. Moss-covered stones jutted from the earth like forgotten gravestones. For the first time, their excitement began to waver, replaced by a subtle unease that none of them dared to voice. And though none admitted it aloud, each felt the same sensation creeping in their chest, as if something unseen was watching, waiting, just beyond the trees. Whispers in the trees. By the time the sun began to sink, the forest had already stolen much of its light. Long shadows stretched across the ground, twisting into shapes that looked almost alive. The group tried to shake off the unease, but silence pressed on them like a weight. Not even the wind stirred the branches above. They stopped at a clearing, a small patch where the ground dipped slightly, surrounded by trees that stood like silent sentinels. Eric joked to break the tension, pulling a flask from his bag. But his laugh sounded forced, hollow against the stillness. No one echoed it. Instead, their attention was drawn to something faint, a sound drifting through the trees. At first, it was subtle, almost like the rustling of leaves. But the leaves were still. The noise grew clearer, a low murmur, as though someone whispered just beyond hearing. The words were indistinct, a hushed chorus rising and falling with an eerie rhythm. Lena froze, her breath caught in her throat. "Did you hear that?" she asked, voice barely audible. The others exchanged uneasy glances. One tried to dismiss it. "It's the wind," Marcus said, though he too glanced nervously at the branches above. But deep down, they all knew there was no wind. The forest was utterly still. The whispers grew louder, weaving around them, slipping between the trees as if circling their little group. Sometimes they sounded close, as if spoken directly into their ears. Other times, they drifted far away, vanishing into the vast darkness. Yet never did the voices sound human. There was something hollow in the tone, something that carried the chill of grave soil. Eric shone his flashlight into the trees. The beam cut through the mist, illuminating twisted branches and thick roots. Nothing moved, but as the light shifted, Lena swore she saw a figure at the edge of the clearing. Tall, pale, and gone the moment she blinked. Her pulse hammered. "There's someone there," she whispered, trembling. But when the group turned, the forest offered only silence and shadows. The whispers swelled again, louder now, the sound overlapping like a crowd murmuring in a language older than time. Panic edged into their breaths. Something unseen was here, and the forest was no longer just trees and silence. It was alive, aware, and watching. The vanishing the group pressed on, though none of them said why. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps fear of admitting how unsettled they truly felt. But each step along the narrowing trail carried a growing heaviness, as though the forest itself resisted their presence. The whispers had faded, replaced now by a suffocating silence. Their flashlight beams cut through the mist in shaky arcs, illuminating gnarled roots and moss-covered stones. Every few minutes, someone swore they heard footsteps behind them, but whenever they turned, nothing followed, only darkness stretching endlessly between the trees. Then, without warning, it happened. "Wait, where's Anna?" Lena's voice cracked with panic as she looked around. Just a moment ago, Anna had been walking behind her, close enough to brush her sleeve. Now the space was empty. The group froze, their breaths clouding in the chilling air. "Anna!" Eric shouted, his voice echoing into the forest. No answer came, only the low groan of trees swaying though no wind touched them. They searched the path, calling her name again and again. Marcus spotted something on the ground, a single scarf, Anna's scarf, snagged on a root. He picked it up with trembling hands, holding it as if it might explain where she'd gone. But there were no footprints, no sounds of struggle, nothing to suggest movement. It was as if she had been erased from existence. Fear clawed at their chests. They huddled close, whispering hurried plans. "We should turn back," Lena insisted, her voice shaking. But when they tried to retrace their steps, the path looked different. The way behind them seemed unfamiliar, twisted, as though the forest had rearranged itself in silence. And then, as panic swelled, the whispers returned. Louder. Closer. This time, woven into the hissing voices, they swore they heard Anna's cry for help. "Please don't leave me," the voice echoed from the trees. They spun in circles, flashlights darting through the woods, but no one appeared. The sound grew frantic, coming from every direction, until it fractured into screams and then silence. The group stood frozen, their hearts pounding. They no longer needed to be convinced. Something was hunting them. Something was taking them, one by one. And they were next. The phantom's curse. The forest pressed tighter with every step, its trees crowding in as though closing a door behind them. The group, now reduced and trembling, stumbled forward with desperation rather than direction. The path wound endlessly, offering no sign of escape, only the same looming pines and the mist that seemed to breathe with them. It was Lena who noticed the carvings first. Her flashlight beam slid across a tree trunk, revealing symbols etched deep into the bark. They were old, worn by weather, but the marks were deliberate circles intersected with jagged lines, figures resembling skeletal faces. More appeared as they moved forward, dozens of trees scarred by the same ritualistic hand. Marcus whispered what they were all thinking: curses. Their unease sharpened into dread when they stumbled into a clearing filled with stone ruins. Broken walls jutted out of the earth like the bones of a buried village. A shattered well sat at its center, surrounded by crumbled houses overtaken by moss and vines. "This place, it's not on any map," Lena murmured. The whispers surged again, stronger here, echoing as if the stones themselves spoke. Shadows flickered at the edges of the clearing, shifting shapes that melted back into the dark when the flashlights touched them. And then, the truth began to form, not in words, but in the cold certainty that gripped their hearts. The phantoms were not random spirits. They were the remnants of people. Long ago, this village had been swallowed by plague and despair. To stop the sickness from spreading, outsiders had condemned it, sealing the villagers within. Left to starve and rot, their souls had never found peace. Betrayed and forgotten, they had been bound to the forest, cursed to wander its paths, luring the living into their eternal suffering. As the group listened, the whispers shifted, becoming clearer, almost pleading. Voices of men, women, and children echoed together, "Join us, stay with us, forever." Lena clutched her chest, gasping as the air grew heavy, her flashlight flickering. Around them, pale figures emerged, thin silhouettes with hollow eyes and gaping mouths, their faces twisted in endless mourning. The curse was no longer just a story. It was alive, and it had claimed them as its next offering, the final echo. The forest seemed to close in entirely now, the mist tightening around the survivors like a noose. The phantoms drifted closer, their forms pale and translucent, their mouths open in soundless cries. The whispers had grown deafening, a chorus of grief and rage that rattled in their skulls. Eric grabbed Lena's arm, his voice raw with panic. "We have to run." He pulled her toward a narrow gap in the trees, a path that looked like it led deeper but was their only chance. Marcus stumbled behind them, but before he could take 3 steps, the mist surged upward like a wave. Pale hands reached out from the ground, clutching his legs. His scream tore through the clearing as he was dragged into the soil, leaving only a hollow silence where he had stood. Lena and Eric bolted, branches clawing at their faces, roots snagging their feet. The forest seemed endless, paths twisting in circles, leading them back to the same cursed trees. Yet somehow, through sheer desperation, they burst into a slope where the trees thinned and the faint outline of moonlight pierced the canopy. For the first time in hours, hope flickered. Eric shoved Lena ahead. "Go. Don't stop." But as he turned back, a figure materialized in his path. Anna. Her eyes were hollow, her lips curled into a desperate, broken smile. "Stay with us," she whispered. Her voice was layered, carrying the tones of dozens of others. Before Eric could move, the forest swallowed him, dragging him into the darkness with the rest. His scream echoed once, then faded forever. Lena stumbled alone into the edge of the woods, collapsing on the damp grass beyond the tree line. She gasped at the sudden silence, the whispers cut off as though the forest itself had slammed shut behind her. For a moment, she wept in relief, her trembling hands pressed against the earth. But as she rose, something stopped her cold. The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. In the still night air, faintly, so faintly it could be mistaken for imagination, came the sound of whispers. Not from behind, but from within her. They coiled around her thoughts, soft and insistent. "Join us, never leave." She staggered back toward the distant glow of the village lights, but the truth gnawed at her with every step. The black forest had released her body. But her soul, it was already theirs.